Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about game depth and the new Halloween game that's coming out and how it compares to Dead by Daylight. As a little minor aside rant, every time I bring up Dead by Daylight when like this game or any other ASIM comes out, there's always someone on Twitter just going, "Oh my god, why do you have to bring up Dead by Daylight every time?" It's like, sure, why would I ever discuss a new asymmetrical 1v4 horror game featuring Myers as a Dead by Daylight content creator? Why would I ever cover something like this? That's just crazy. Why would I compare that to Deep Side Rant? So I watched the gameplay trailer for this game, and it's Friday the 13th. It's just Friday the 13th again, without licensing issues. Which, that sounds like it sounds like I'm saying that that's a bad thing, but Friday the 13th was actually a pretty fun game. I played it for maybe like a month. I didn't play it a lot, but playing that game with friends was genuinely very, very fun. So to see a game that is basically just the exact same thing, straight up down to the Jason like warping stuff like that, it's like it is the exact same game. From what I can tell from the gameplay trailer, I'm sure there's some new elements and stuff like that, but it really does feel very, very, very similar to Friday the 13th. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That game was very fun. And because this game's not going to have any licensing issues, it's possible it'll get supported, obviously, for a lot longer than that game did. But the discussion I want to have here is about game depth. To me, the original Friday the 13th and like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff like that, those games were not very deep, which is why I will actually say, as a casual player, playing those games like with a custom lobby of your friends is actually more fun than playing like a custom match of DBD with your friends. It is a really, really good time for just a casual, a couple of games and just, dicking around doing silly shit. It's really, really fun for that stuff. So for that reason, I'm still excited for this game to come out because it'll be fun at least for a couple of weeks playing it with friends, just doing silly, stupid shit. But the problem is game depth. Like none of these ASIMs that come out, especially from the companies involved in the production of this game, they don't really have that much depth. They are pretty much what we actually call DBD. Like we call DBD a party game, but truthfully, there's obviously way more to it than that. But these like genuinely are like party games. These are the games you just, get drunk and play with your friends and have a good time. And they're perfect for that. And for that, they're really fun. But they don't really have the same gameplay hooks or even outside the game, like incentives like, the Blood Web, for example. They don't even have good progression systems to keep people invested into these games. We look at even Friday the 13th, which again, this is basically just the exact same game with a different coat of paint. But even that game lost most of its player base within the first couple of months. As a multiplayer game, that's not a good sign. A single player game, that's to be expected. But if you have like a multiplayer, like live service game, and you lose most of your player base within the first few months, that's typically a very bad sign and indicates there's not enough hooks to keep your players invested into your game. Now, again, this is before the lawsuit, had nothing to do with that. They lost most of their player base before the lawsuit was even announced. So it has nothing to do with that. It's just due to the fact that the game didn't have enough, outside the game progression systems and inside the game mechanical skill to keep people invested in trying to get better at the game. It was just a fun, silly party game. And again, nothing wrong with that. If that's what they're trying to make, that's fine. And if they don't plan on having this game last a couple of months, that's fine. This is more for the people that are saying maybe this game will kill DBD. I can assure you it will not. I am 100% sure. And frankly, I would love to be smug and arrogant about the prediction because if I'm wrong, it's a win-win. If I'm wrong, we actually finally have a competitor to DBD, and that's the greatest thing that could happen for the game. So I would love to be proven wrong. I would absolutely love to be proven wrong. But I know it's just not going to succeed. Nothing IllFonic, the developers of this game, have ever made has lasted past a couple of months. They just have never a single time done that. So I don't know why you would have any hope for this game at all. So I would love to be hopeful about it. I've been in the asymmetrical block for a decade now. I've seen what happens, and I know what's going to happen. But I do want to talk about depth and how it relates to Dead by Daylight, because every time I bring this up, I'll say, yeah, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the games were figured out. The meta was figured out. Like in Texas Chainsaw, the meta was figured out in like a week. People figured out rushing out of the basement is the correct play, bringing Connie to bust the lock. The I forget, the fuse box exit on one of the maps was so busted you can do it in a minute. Like, people figured this shit out so incredibly quickly, and the developers didn't really adjust for that. They have kind of said, they went into this game making it like with a vision, and they were going to stick to that vision. If the players found something different, they didn't care. They were just going to stick to the vision. The problem is they found stupid ways to abuse the shit out of it and it caused people to just stop playing the game. And I think that's one of the things that Dead by Daylight did so well, and it's one of the reasons they're so successful, is they didn't just, grit their teeth and stick with their vision. They adjusted with the player base. They eventually realized, okay, this isn't an asymmetrical horror game where they're playing like they're in a horror game. This is basically just tag, except there's horror themes in it. And I think the first actual noticing of that from the developers came with like the entity blocker, because they started realizing getting found by the killer actually not such a big deal, and the players very quickly adjusted to that. So then they started focusing on the more action aspects of the game. They moved with the player base, and because of that, instead of going down and down in the game, the player base just kept going up and up and up. They went with the player base. So I would say to IllFonic, if they want this game to last, move with the player base. Actually see what they're doing, see how they're actually playing the game. Don't just go into it with a vision that you have and stick with that. React to how people are playing the game. And if they, find out something that you didn't really think of, address it and make it not a problem anymore, and keep doing that. And then it's possible that the game will last a decent amount of time. Again, I don't even think they are planning for it to last a lot of time. They've never said this is going to be a new DBD that's not going to last, 10 years. I don't even think they're trying to do that. So I can't say they're failing at doing that, because they have never even said they want to do that. So this just seems to be like it's going to be one of those things where, for a couple months it's fun and then no one plays it again. Now, the one upside that this game does actually have is it has a single player mode where none of these other ASIMs actually have that. So even after that, you can continue to play the game. It's not an afterthought added with a bot mode because the game is dead and no one's there to play it, so they just throw it in. It's actually being made with single player in mind as well. So that's great, and another reason this game actually might do better than its predecessors. So that's fantastic. But in terms of depth and DBD and stuff like that, whenever people talk about, running around a piece of wood, DBD is not deep at all, I can master it in 20 hours, something like that. I mean, you have to know, if you're saying that stuff, you have to know in the back of your mind that you're just on copium. You have to know that you're bullshitting yourself, because DBD is one of those games when you just watch it, you think, wow, this is stupid. It's just running around a piece of wood. Anyone can do this. But then you see the difference between a new Survivor and a competitive Survivor, and it's an entirely different video game. And if you truly actually think that there's no skill involved with the game, and it's just running around a piece of wood, and then that's just all that is, then I don't know really how to help you, because you're entering this argument being so incredibly disingenuous that there's no point even discussing things with you. If that were the case, then the difference between a brand new player and a competitive player with 10,000 hours, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But obviously the competitive player is going to run the killer for 17 times as long as the original, new Survivor player. So obviously there's something there. There's a skill component there. And it's a lot of stuff that people don't really acknowledge or address, because A, they just don't want to spend the time to learn it, so they pretend it doesn't exist to make themselves feel better about themselves. Or B, they feel like they've actually already mastered it, which I can just tell you, if you think you've mastered Dead by Daylight, you are incorrect, because nobody has mastered it. To master DBD, you'd have to be the best at every killer. You'd have to be the best at Survivor. You'd have to know how to go against every killer. You have to know every single check spot. You'd have to know everything about macro gameplay, where gens can spawn, where totem. You would have to know. No one has all of that. There's not a single player that has mastered all aspects of the game. That's how I can prove that it's incredibly deep, because it's just still, people with 20,000 hours still have not mastered all of the game. And that is, I think, one of the core reasons people keep playing DBD. There's always some incentive to try to learn something new. And just when you finally get filled with something, then there's a new Survivor perk, or there's a new killer that comes out, or there's a new map, and then there's just new shit to learn. So there's just so much depth to the game, and a lot of people undersell it because they just basically want to feel better about themselves. It sounds harsh saying it like that, but that's truly the only way that I can say that. If you, as a casual player, acknowledge that there are people way better than you and there's a skill component of this game that you just don't care about it, addressing, that's fantastic. You are basically the majority of the player base, and we love and need you guys to continue playing the game. But if you're a casual player and you say, I've mastered it, there's nothing else here, then you're just fucking delusional at that point. I don't know how to help you, but there is a reason DBD has lasted so long. Licenses and stuff obviously helps. The developers moving with the game player base obviously helps a lot too, but there really is a lot of hidden depth in the gameplay that keeps people playing, and the progression system as well is another, even outside of the game, feature that keeps people playing. I don't think it's going to happen with Halloween. I think it's going to be fun for a few months, and then we're just going to have the same thing we had with Friday the 13th, where most of the player base goes away even before any lawsuits or anything like that. So, again, would love to be proven wrong. I'll still be checking it out when it comes out, because like I said, the first couple of weeks of this shit, it's probably going to be very, very fun. So, looking forward to that. But in terms of stopping DBD, obviously it's not going to.